everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be diving into the fascinating world of computational cognitive neuroscience.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty fascinating field. It's all about using computers to understand how our brains work, like how we think, how we learn, and how we perceive the world.
Like cracking the code of our own minds, right?
Exactly. And to guide us on this deep dive, we're going to be taking a close look at this book here, Computational Explorations in Cognitive Neuroscience by Randall C. O'Reilly and Yuko Munakata.
Now, I know the title might sound a little intimidating, a little textbooky maybe,
Yeah.
but trust me, this book is anything but dry. It's actually packed with really clever analogies and hands-on examples that make even most complex ideas surprisingly accessible.
Right. And one of the first things that really caught my eye was this idea of a neural detector. It's presented as like this mini computer inside our brains, almost like a little processing unit. And I was wondering, what makes this analogy so powerful for understanding how neurons actually work? It's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's brilliant because it simplifies the complexity of neural communication without losing the essence of what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
You see a neuron receives signals from other neurons, kind of like inputs, then it processes those signals, and then it sends out its own signal based on, what it's kind of decided.
Ah, I see. So it's like it's making a decision.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a mini decision maker. And this simple input processing output framework helps us grasp how even a single neuron can be this powerful computational unit.
That's wild. So it's like each neuron's making a tiny decision, and all those tiny decisions happening all at the same time are what create our thoughts and our perceptions and even our actions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the book goes on to explore several key principles that govern how these neural detectors work together. It's like the concepts like parallelism, gradedness, interactivity, and competition.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. That's a lot of big words.
Yeah, well, they're big words, but they represent pretty simple ideas.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with parallelism. Now, this one is mind-blowing because it means our brains are incredible multitaskers.
Multitaskers. Really?
Oh, yeah, big time. So unlike typical computers that process information step by step, one thing at a time,
Yeah.
our brains are wired for parallel processing, meaning we can do multiple things at once.
Okay, so I can be walking and talking and chewing gum all at the same time.
Exactly. Think about everything you do at once. You're perceiving the world around you. You're planning your next move. You might even be daydreaming all at the same time.
Whoa.
That's parallelism in action.
That's wild. But doesn't the brain have limits? I mean, how does it decide what to focus on when we're juggling so many things at once?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of how these principles work together. So the brain isn't just randomly processing everything in parallel. It's selectively amplifying certain signals and inhibiting others based on what's relevant at that moment.
So it's kind of like a conductor leading an orchestra, bringing different instruments in and out of focus to create this harmonious sound.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And this selective amplification and inhibition is actually closely tied to another one of those principles we talked about.
Yeah.
Gradedness.
Okay, so if parallelism is like the whole orchestra playing is gradedness, about how loud or soft each instrument is.
You got it. Gradedness refers to the fact that neurons can convey information not just by firing or not firing, but by varying the strength of their signals, like a dimmer switch, not just an on-off switch.
So it's not just black and white, it's like shades of gray.
Exactly. This nuanced signaling allows for incredible flexibility in representing and processing information.
So our brains are working in shades of gray all the time, picking up on those subtle differences and fine-tuning our perception of the world.
That's right. Think about how we perceive color, for instance. It's not just red or not red. It's a whole spectrum of shades and hues, all thanks to the graded nature of neural signals.
Wow, our brains are way more sophisticated than I ever gave them credit for. Okay, so we've got parallelism and gradedness down, but what about interactivity and competition? What role do they play in this neural orchestra?
Well, just like in an orchestra where musicians constantly listen and respond to each other, interactivity highlights the constant communication happening between different brain areas. They're constantly exchanging information, influencing each other's activity, creating this dynamic interconnected system.
So it's not just about individual neurons making decisions, it's about groups of neurons working together, influencing each other, almost like a lively debate.
Exactly. Now imagine that some of these neural groups have different opinions about what's happening in the world. That's where competition comes in. Different groups of neurons compete to represent different interpretations or features, and the, the strongest signals win, influencing our overall perception or behavior.
It's like a neural election where the most relevant information gets voted into prominence.
Huh? Yeah, I like that. A neural election.
I'm starting to see how all of these principles are connected. They're not just separate ideas, they're all working together to create this incredible symphony of brain activity. But I have a question. With all this competition and interaction going on, how do we actually learn anything new? How do our brains change based on our experiences?
That's where the magic of learning comes in. And this book goes deep into how our brains change and adapt based on our experiences. And a key concept here is Hebbian learning.
Hebbian learning.
Yeah, you might have heard the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before. But what does that actually mean in terms of like how we learn new things?
Well, it boils down to the idea that the connections between neurons, they actually strengthen when they're activated at the same time.
Mm.
So the more those neurons fire together, the stronger their bond becomes, making them more likely to activate each other in the future.
So it's like you're building a path. The more you walk down that path, the more established it becomes.
Exactly. And these strengthened connections form the basis for how we acquire, new skills, how we form memories, and even how we recognize patterns in the world around us.
So Hebbian learning is like the foundation of learning in the brain. Yeah. I got it. But the book also mentions something called principal component analysis, or PCA.
PCA.
Yeah, no, I vaguely remember that from like a stats class I took ages ago, but can you refresh my memory and explain how it fits into all of this? Like, how does PCA relate to Hebbian learning?
Absolutely. So think of PCA as a way for the brain to identify the most important patterns in a sea of information.
Okay.
Imagine you have this giant, messy data set.
Yeah.
PCA helps you find the key features that capture the essence of that data, allowing you to ignore the less important details.
So it's like a filter that helps the brain focus on the signal and tune out all the noise?
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that PCA has a strong connection to Hebbian learning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, remember how we were talking about connections strengthening when neurons fire together?
Yeah.
Well, PCA essentially identifies those groups of neurons that tend to fire together, revealing the underlying patterns that the brain is learning.
Whoa, so PCA is almost like looking under the hood and seeing which neural circuits are getting wired together as we learn something new. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty powerful concept.
But how do we actually study these complex processes in action? I mean, we can't just crack open someone's skull and watch their neurons firing, right?
Uh-huh. Right. Well, that's where the power of computational cognitive neuroscience really shines. This book introduces this idea of using computer simulations to model these processes and test different hypotheses.
Okay, so we're talking about building like virtual brains.
In a sense, yes. These simulations allow us to create simplified models of neural networks and then observe how they behave under different conditions. We can manipulate parameters, introduce learning challenges, and see how the network adapts, and it provides this really amazing window into how real brains might be doing the same thing.
It's like we're running experiments on a digital version of the brain.
Exactly. And by comparing the behavior of the simulation to how real people perform on similar tasks, we can gain confidence in the model and refine our understanding of how the brain works.
So we can actually test whether these theoretical ideas about learning actually hold up in a simulated environment.
Precisely.
This is so cool. It's like we're using the power of computers to unlock the secrets of our own minds. But I have to admit, the idea of simulating something as complex as the brain, it feels a bit daunting. I mean, are we really able to capture all of its intricacies and lines of code?
It's an important point to consider, and the book emphasizes that simulations are not meant to be perfect replicas of the brain.
Yeah.
They're tools, powerful tools, but still simplifications of a much more complex system.
So it's not about replacing real brains with virtual ones.
No.
It's about using simulations to test specific ideas and gain insights that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Exactly. And to make these simulations even more accessible, the book introduces us to this remarkable piece of software called PDP++.
PDP++? That sounds familiar.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I can't quite place it. Can you tell us a bit more about what it is and why it's such a big deal for researchers and students alike?
Oh, yeah, PDP++, it stands for Parallel Distributed Processing, right?
That's right.
And it's basically a software platform that allows you to build and run your own neural network simulations. It's like having a virtual brain lab right on your computer. And what's really cool about PDP++ is that it makes all these complex concepts from the book like come alive. It's one thing to read about Hebbian learning or PCA, but it's a whole other level of understanding to actually see these principles in action, like manipulate parameters and observe how the network responds.
Yeah. So for students like me who learn best by doing PDP++, provides like a hands-on way to really grasp these concepts.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic tool for both learning and research. In fact, the book includes a series of exercises and tutorials that guide readers through building and experimenting with different neural network models using PDP++. It's like having a virtual mentor guiding you through the process.
That's awesome. I'm starting to see why this book and software combination is such a game changer for understanding the brain. It's not just about passively absorbing information. It's about actively engaging with these concepts and seeing how they work. It's like learning to play an instrument. You can read all the theory you want, but you won't truly understand it until you pick up the instrument and start playing.
That's a great analogy. And just like learning an instrument, exploring these simulations can be both challenging and incredibly rewarding. You start to see the connections between different concepts. Begin to anticipate how the network will behave, and you gain this deeper appreciation for the complexity and beauty of the brain.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into computational cognitive neuroscience, I'm curious to hear your perspective on the bigger picture. Do you think we'll ever be able to fully replicate the human brain in a computer? Is that even like a realistic goal?
It's a question that has fueled, countless debates and science fiction stories. And while I believe that these computational models are incredibly powerful tools for understanding the brain, I think it's important to acknowledge that the human brain is an incredibly complex system shaped by millions of years of evolution. It's not just about the sheer number of neurons and connections. It's about the intricate interplay of genes and environment and experience. So while I'm excited about the progress we're making, I think it's wise to approach the idea of a perfect brain replica with a healthy dose of skepticism.
That makes sense. It's like trying to capture the essence of a human being in a photograph. You can capture a moment and expression, but there's so much more to a person than what can be captured in a single image.
Precisely. But even if we never achieve a perfect brain replica, the journey of exploration itself is incredibly valuable. Every simulation we build, every experiment we run, brings us closer to understanding the fundamental principles that govern how we think, how we learn, and how we perceive the world.
And who knows what amazing discoveries await us along the way. Maybe these computational models will help us develop new treatments for brain disorders or inspire the creation of truly intelligent artificial systems. The possibilities are truly mind-boggling.
Indeed. The human brain, with all its complexity and wonder, remains one of the greatest mysteries we have yet to fully unravel. And computational explorations in cognitive neuroscience provides this fascinating glimpse into how we're using the power of computers to illuminate this extraordinary organ.
Well said. And to our listeners out there, I encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating field. Pick up the book, download PDP++, and start running your own simulations. You might be surprised by what you discover, not just about the brain, but about yourself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep those neural detectors firing and never stop asking those big thought-provoking questions.